When we look back 5 years from now, what's the story you hope people tell about data's role in building the foundation of decentralized AI and finance?
That's often like something that we think about a lot, like how do you want to be seen in the future? And to sum it up, I would say that I would want people to say that Datai Network did for blockchain what Google did for the web in the past. So turning an overwhelming amount of data into something that's searchable, that's contextual, that you're able to utilize.
You've recently been at Token 2049 in Dubai. Really curious, like what stood out? What are people thinking about AI today versus 6-12 months ago? And what was the vibe like?
I think this year, the vibe was a bit different. Like there was a lot of builder energy. There were a lot of investors up with Zerion, with our partners. We also spent quite a bit of time with the BNB chain team.
All right, welcome everybody to the first ever ChainGPT Labs Founder Podcast Series, where we sit down with the builders, the founders, and the operators pushing the limits of Web3 and AI and decentralized infrastructure. We spent the last few years hands-on working with some of the most ambitious teams in the Web3 space, and often their stories are left untold. And that's exactly what we're doing with this Founder Podcast Series, is to feature our founders and to share what they're building.
Yeah, and we couldn't think of a better project to kick things off with than our friends at Datai Network, a team building the data backbone that AI agents, DeFi apps, and analytic tools are going to rely on. They're not just indexing chains, they're turning raw blockchain chaos into structured, usable intelligence. So joining us today are Maria and Elie from Datai, and we'll be talking about how blockchain data is broken and what it takes to structure and label it at scale, what their live testnet unlocks for builders, and how some of the biggest names in crypto are already using their platform behind the scenes. Let's just dive in. Cool. So let's do it, guys. You've recently been at Token 2049 in Dubai. Really curious, like what stood out? What are people thinking about AI today versus 6-12 months ago? And what was the vibe like? Did you have a fun time at the event?
Yeah, so thanks for having us here today, Chris and Jay. Yeah, I mean, Token 2049, it's always a good event. So it wasn't the first time we went, but I think this year the vibe was a bit different. Like there was a lot of builder energy. There were a lot of investors. It's always nice to like meet up with our current customers. Like we met up with Zerion, with our partners. We also spent quite a bit of time with the BNB chain team. So I think, on the project side, like for us, it's very useful, always very good quality people all around, the event. And then in terms of like the themes, yeah, you guessed it correctly. I mean, maybe I'm biased because I'm working in this field, but there was a lot of discussions around AI and blockchain at Token 2049. And I think people are starting to realize now, like in 2024, everyone was talking about agents. And this year, like in 2025, everyone is shipping those agents. So it's a very exciting time to be here. And yeah, I mean, overall, the event was really fruitful for us.
Very cool. So we know that you spoke at the Google Cloud and Beam event about unlocking AI's future. So how do you think that perception of blockchain and AI has changed recently? There's been a lot of promise, maybe not the best execution. What was your sense from that discussion and everything else you've been taking in?
Yeah. So at the event hosted by Google Cloud, I mainly spoke about teaching AI to speak Web3. Because what many people don't know, and which which we realized recently, is that all the GPTs that people are using on a day-to-day basis, and sometimes they're using it to ask about on-chain data and insights, it hasn't been fed blockchain data. So it's trained on textual information. It's scraping the internet, like websites all over the place. But blockchain data, it's like billions of rows of time series data. And this needs to be translated into a format that the AI can understand before it can actually leverage it and use it for like various applications like on-chain trading, insights, and so on. So it was a very interesting discussion with many people like in the industry, mainly revolving around solving this problem, which what we're trying to do at Datai Network today. And yeah, the perception of what has changed, I think like before people were very excited about AI and Web3 because of course you're marrying two technologies together that are very, very hyped. But I think now the perception is like, okay, before we get super excited about AI and Web3, like let's first really get the data right, get it like trustworthy, verifiable, so that the AI on top as applications can be super useful.
And that's the key, isn't it? And like, how can Web3 sort of bridge that gap between verifying data, making it more useful for this integration with Web3 and AI? So last question for me on this intro part. Another cool thing you guys are a part of is the MVB Accelerator, which is a chain accelerator. Did anything shift about the way that you think about scale, infra, or product market fit during your time in this program?
Yes. So yeah, as you mentioned, the MVP program, it's an accelerator. Program stands for Most Valuable Builder, and it's quite an intense program. So we had the kickoff in Hong Kong back in April. It was a very interesting one because we got to speak with a lot of interesting like founders and leaders in the space. Even CZ and Vitalik came over for a talk. So what it does is actually like the program kind of stress tested our project. So we're able to get like a mini audit on every single aspect of our business, whether it was like our go-to market, our product market fit, our tokenomics, like plenty of different aspects on the business, which has been really useful. I wouldn't say it shifted something in the way we think about it, but we just, because of all the networking opportunities that we got access to, we just thought like, okay, sky's the limit. And, like now we have to go, and we were able to really get partnerships through the program. So for example, we recently partnered up with Siren on BSC. We're currently integrating our on-chain data so they can provide insights on BNB chain. So yeah, I think overall it's a very positive program to be part of. In case any founders are thinking about joining it, like I would recommend it. Yeah, that's mainly like my take from the MVP program.
Awesome. I mean, you guys have been up to quite a lot lately. Some real big milestones have been achieved, and it's really awesome to see. But achievements aside, there's one thing that I want to get into. I've seen it quite a lot across Twitter recently, lots of projects tweeting about it, and that's that blockchain data is broken. And for the most part, I think at a surface level, people don't really understand what that means. So one thing, especially myself, when it comes to this, is that when you're kind of looking at raw blockchain data, like on Etherscan, SolScan, it's almost like rows and rows of transactions, and it really can just be chaotic and like a mess, right? So what I want to ask you guys and try to find out is what's happening? Who's behind all of this? Who's contextualizing that data, structuring it, labeling it? Because, I mean, to the outside user, it almost looks useless. And I assume for AI applications as well. Like, would you agree that raw blockchain data today is closer to noise than sort of information? And how is Datai bridging this gap for users?
Yeah, it's a very good question because again, like if you're not a little bit on the technical side, it's hard to understand why blockchain data is so enigmatic, right? And so like hard to decrypt. Maybe I can give an example. Like you can think about on-chain data in its raw form, like the digital equivalent of radio static. So there's billions of transfer calls, spam tokens, all screaming at once. And while the classic indexers, they do translate the static into like a structured table, but they still dump everything, like including scams into your database. And you don't want to be using necessarily all of this information for your AI applications or whatever you're using it for your insights. And Datai Network is bridging that gap by trying to first ingest the blocks in real time. And we pass every event through machine learning filters that basically spot malicious, duplicate, or low signal activity. Then we clean the transactions and we enrich them with context, meaning we give like which contract type, asset quality, risk score, or even just why that action matters. So that then the AI models and dApp builders, developers can just see the contextual data that they can trust. And that actually turns days of cleaning data into just seconds of API calls.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty interesting when you get into it. There's a lot more intricacies happening than most people understand. So there's another question or a follow-up question that I was going to ask you, but I think I'm going to skip ahead to the next one because you're speaking about indexing. When it comes to on-chain indexing, it's kind of become very chain specific. Every project's sort of building on its own isolated indexes, fragmenting, I guess, that blockchain data as well in the process. Do you think multi-chain aggregation with cross-chain referencing will become mandatory in the future of AI and DeFi apps? I think maybe Elie, this one might be for you because as I understand, you're definitely the technical guy.
Yeah, I'll take that one. So I would say not just mandatory, it's inevitable. So today, every dApp owner developed its own subgraph with its own schema. And imagine I am a user using 10 different dApps. So if I'm building my own application to get the information from those dApps, I'm forced to fire 10 incomplete inquiries and glue the result in a spreadsheet because each indexer is completely different. So what we're doing at Datai, so we're replacing that nightmare into a single open format stretched across different chain and protocol, one API query. So it's one endpoint that's turning wallet balances, position, action everywhere into one query. So developers, they integrate once or they have one query into the Datai network and they can automatically see the user's full portfolio in one panel. And that's the foundation that we're building for AI agents that need to think holistically rather than in a siloed, fragmented way.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, it's pretty interesting. And I guess with that in mind, we have another follow-up question to that. And I guess another problem that we're seeing pretty often is most blockchain data platforms focus on what happened, quote unquote, but almost none of the other ones help you to understand who did it and why. You're profiling wallet behaviors, labeling users. How important is behavioral intelligence compared to just transactional indexing?
Yeah, thanks, Jay. I think that's a really great question. And I may be giving a bit of metaphors here, but you can think of the raw transactions basically like the CCTV footage in a store. So you see someone walking in, but you don't really know, like if they bought a coffee, if they stole a sandwich, if they placed a bet. And behavioral intelligence is basically as if you had the cashier's receipt, but also the customer profile rolled into one. And so Datai Network, today we maintain the largest smart contract catalog. We have over 3 million smart contracts like identified and labeled in DeFi and over 10 million in total. So when a wallet interacts with any of those smart contracts, we're basically translating the bytecode into plain English. So I can give you a couple of examples, but it's like this call added 2 ETH to a liquidity pool, or that one bridged USDC to Arbitrum, and so on. So when you stitch like all of those different labeled actions together, you can finally get an actual persona on chain. So you're able to tell, is that person a yield farmer, an NFT flipper, like an arbitrage bot, or just a DeFi hardcore trader? And what's important also to note is that while we are assessing the on-chain activity and behavior behind the wallet, we do not and not like de-anonymize it. So other players on the market, like ICOM, they're focused on figuring out like who was behind this trade, which whale, which enterprise, and so on. We're just focused on the actual behavior and decrypting it and analyzing it for business needs, for developers, for applications. So for dApps and AI agents, like this context is really gold. It can drive personalized UX. It can drive like risk scoring, even like more, I would say, specific marketing strategies with higher ROI because you really know who you're targeting and their activity on chain.
That is an awesome response. I really love that analogy that you gave in the beginning. It really helps us to understand what's going on here. And I want our listeners to understand that how valuable what you guys is actually doing, especially from a B2B perspective as well. And I guess more than just a B2B perspective too. It's really interesting stuff.
Yeah, we're into the technical flow here. So I want to lay out like what we understand, and then maybe you can walk us through the full pipeline in detail. So we know that you guys have three major layers: sourcing the raw data, finding it through AI models, and exposing it to applications. So can you walk us through that pipeline and where the hardest engineering challenges sit? Because that doesn't sound like an easy process to fulfill.
Yeah, I'll try to continue with the analogies. So we have three layers, and I'll call them the boring, the nice, and the sexy. And always the boring is the hardest, right? So the boring, which is like the lowest part, this is where we're running archives, catching and reorganizing, streaming. 10,000 plus events are being indexed per second across more than 20 chain. So it's the plumbing. So it's the pipe. So if there is a leak in the pipe, nothing else matters, right? So all the other nice and sexy, I mean, this is our indexation layer where we've been building it for the past 3 years. We decided to open it up for other developers and people running Node to join and to participate. This is where we're indexing data in a smart way. And then there is, we call it refining layer, the nice one. This is where we're cleaning, and it's the cleaning and the labeling agent. So here we shred the spam, we attach market price, brand each contract to its real role, and this is where indexers stop and data really begins. And lastly is the sexy one. Think about it as a polished REST or GraphQL WebSocket endpoint where people they're using the power of this data that has been curated to use it to build dashboards, to build AI agents, wallets, and innovation lives here. Those are the business application, but it only shines because the lower layer never miss a beat. The hardest battle are still in the basement, maintaining the slowest level without latency while scrubbing the junk and copying every proxy, cleaning this data, and feeding it into the upper levels.
So this is where some of the magic that you guys do comes in. But basically, like smart contract labeling, it seems simple at first, but at scale, if you guys are dealing with tons of data, it seems really tricky. You know, contracts obviously behave differently across chains, standards evolve, labels decay. So how do you build a labeling system that stays accurate over time, not just at block zero?
So we started old school, and this labeling of smart contract, we've been doing it since beginning of 2023. We did around 80,000 integration of smart contract manually with a human. And then based on that catalog of 80,000 smart contract, we started feeding those smart contracts into a model, a machine learning model that is trained and analyzing the code of those smart contracts with RAG and all those technologies that exist today and the behavior of the smart contract. And with this, we're able today to predict for any smart contract between 80 to 90% confidence, completely anonymously. Just give us a smart contract and we'll try to figure out what the smart contract is doing. Now, is it true for 100% of the smart contract? No. There are some new smart contracts that are being created with unknown pattern, like say a brand new gaming mechanics, right? So we get it quarantined because our model is not able to do it. And this is where we created a labeling arena where we ask for people to come and to label smart contract for us because we still need the human to come in. Once they're being labeled, we feed them again into our system so that we recognize similar behavior. Now, of course, everything I mentioned is very technical, but what's the end goal? Once we start analyzing and understanding those smart contracts, we can start understanding what the users are doing and hence their behavior on chip.
Yeah, appreciate you diving deep into the tech here with us. Well, one more for me before we go back over to Jason, and it's about data latency. So we know speed is like the most important thing when it comes for, AI agents. The faster you serve structured insights, the more valuable your data is. How does that factor in when you're thinking about like balancing decentralization, freshness, and cost, of course, when you design the network architecture?
Jerry, we can spend an hour only on this question. I would say so. We are operating in an adaptive refresh model. Not all the data are being refreshed at the same rate. It depends, like how much the freshness of this data is being used and is needed for an end user. If it's a transaction, we don't index them. You just come to us, we index them for you. If it's the price, of course, it's automatically DeFi position, like we're speaking about every block every 10 seconds. If it's the volatility of the pool of the volume every 15 minutes. So of course, each type of data has different frequency of being updated. Our client request and the test that we've done, we realized that if we approach 300 to 400 requests per second, especially for financial position, this is more than enough for users to interact with us. So today, Datai Network is around 500 requests per second that we can reply. And the more the load will increase, the more we'll keep optimizing our post and indexes.
That's really cool stuff. to be honest. It's super interesting to learn all these sort of more technical concepts that are happening behind the scenes within data. One thing I want to move on to, which may be a little bit more exciting for some of the other listeners, and that's your guys' testnet. It's live at the moment. And what's exciting to us, it's not just like another staking game, or dare I say, a vaporware project, right? It's actually about data contribution and refinement. So I guess my question to you, Elie, is what are you kind of hoping that builders and early testers learn and improve during this phase of the testnet?
Yeah, very, very interesting question. Mainly three things. So one is speed. We want a brand new chain to spin up its own indexer on Datai in under 30 minutes. And that's the challenge that we're working with several new chains that we're trying to achieve. Second is accuracy. So we're running bug bounties for any misleading contract or false positive scan flag. And third is the capacity, like to stress test. And this goes back to my previous answer, like stress test us with real traffic so we can fine tune token incentives before mainnet, like how much are we able to receive. So in our stress test, we went up to 500 requests per second. That's why I can announce this. So builder who help us harden the system today will own, I'll say, founding indexer status. And the fees discount that can come with it, of course, forever they will be able to have.
Awesome. Guys, what I want to mention to our audience here is that there is bug bounties available, which is really exciting. And there is going to be potential incentives for people participating in the testnet. So all those details, we're definitely going to drop them down in the caption or in whatever sort of platform we upload this to. All those details will be there for you guys to check out. So next up, I want to move on to another thing. So if I'm a dev and I want to build something like maybe a wallet dashboard or a DeFi tracker, what's the path for doing something like that on the testnet today? Can I get started with the SDKs? Is there an easy way to go from raw on-chain data to something usable? I just want to understand for the people that sort of want to participate in this, how easy is that for them to do?
Yeah. Very easy. And I will just add to your question. Datai Network is not only building data for developers, but we're building data that can be consumed by any user, trader, on-chain, and they will be able to query our data without even understanding API or what type of data they want to consume. Now, we did not launch that product yet. It's something exciting that we're working on that we will launch in the next months. For now, developers, very easy. You can create an account by going to api.datai.network. Also on whatever platform we will release this, of course, this information will be there. There is a faucet. You can get 4,000 credit that you can start using automatically. Documentation is ready, all the API, transaction insight, DeFi position, token balances, LP token balances. You can start querying them and you can start receiving all those information. Very important for any dev, for any project, no RPC nodes, no ETL scripts, no six-figure infrastructure spend, just an API call that is in a couple of cents that you can consume to get your needed data.
That's awesome. And I really want to emphasize what Ellie's just said here of how simple that actually is. For myself as a marketer, I've gone and I've explored on their testnet. And to somebody that's non-technical, you spend a few minutes on there and you can really grasp the concept so easily, which I love, which is what you guys have done here. So it's really awesome to see. That leads me on to another question. I think maybe Maria, this one might be more so for you. It's kind of jumping back to what you said a little bit earlier. You said before that data is the story behind the wallet. How are clients using the behavioral data? Are they using it for risk scoring, portfolio views, marketing, or what else could they be using this for?
Yeah, that's a good question, Jay, and it really allows us to kind of speak about different use cases for our data. So today, I would say the most mature customer segments using our data are mainly, so one of them, it's crypto accounting firms. They use our data in various ways, but one of the ways which they love is that it allows them to assess the complexity of a wallet for their incoming customer. So historically, crypto accounting firms were checking just the number of transactions in the wallet and then like trying to guess, okay, if they have a lot of transactions, that means our scope of work is very big, so we're going to price it a bit higher. Whereas now, like with one click of a button, they can paste basically the wallets or like one or a bundle of wallets of their customers and get like a full view of the complexity of the wallet, meaning like the breakdown of the activity on chain of this user or firm and so on. And this allows them really to price their customers like more fairly to them and to their customer. It allows them to assess the scope of work, and so they say this, not us, but they say like it saved them up to 15 hours per customer of just like pre-onboarding time, which is really great, like to hear, how the data is really helping some businesses. So other types of customers that use Datai Network's data are DeFi funds as well. They're mainly using it for like financial reporting internally. And many of them use like daily NAV reports, so net asset value reporting. We're also working with wallet providers who source various on-chain data metrics from Datai Network. We've also worked with marketing teams like for segmentation of on-chain activity. Even compliance, some compliance players have used us mainly to get like complementary data sets to their own like AML and compliance core data. So mainly like they're tracking bridging activities and so on of some users. So it helps them out as well with their compliance tasks. Yeah, it's really endless. So these are the customers that are already using a data network, but like the potential is huge. So we're also getting a lot of requests recently from AI agent companies because of our level of insightful on-chain data. It's much more easy for them to use directly, saves them a lot of time, again, with all the crunching and analysis and like making it contextual. So that's been also a customer segment that's picking up quite fast. But as Elie mentioned earlier, so even though we're serving these B2B customers, like since almost more than a year now, we also want to democratize like the data access of on-chain insights to not just businesses, not just developers, but also any user. So we're working on this at the moment. So stay tuned.
That's awesome. And I really want to just spend a little bit of time on one point, which is Data is actually a functioning company. It's not something that's theoretical. What they are speaking about is actually happening. So a lot of these other crypto or Web3 companies, they're still sort of building out this infrastructure. Data is doing that already, which is awesome to see. And what you just mentioned really excites me as a marketer, because we're going to get some really cool insights and sort of level up the Web3 marketing game. And I don't think people realize how powerful that actually is.
Yeah,
I
so
just want to
true.
pause it here, Craig.
Great. Yeah. And Jason, I have to agree with your last statement. Such a cool team to speak with and work with, and a real operating company with a actual product that brings a lot of value to the ecosystem. We both worked in the industry for a while, so we know that projects like this are pretty rare. So super cool to sit down and talk about it. And I want to move the conversation now to something that's really important to me, which is real world implications. Like I just said, this is a real product, so of course it's going to have real world implications. Let's talk about how it can be used, especially when it comes to AI agents that are truly intelligent, bots that can reason, predict, and optimize. But of course, as we've been over a couple times, they need this real clean data to operate. So if you had to predict, what is the most exciting use case you hope gets built on top of your platform?
And that's a good question. I mean, I wouldn't even say predict, or hope. I could already speak to what real customers, like real agents today, are building on top of Datai Network. So one of the biggest use cases, you touched upon it a bit, Chris, but we mainly see it for trading purposes. So Datai is being used today to train agents that can find better opportunities for trading. So either on liquidity pools, staking, or just understanding the behavior of a wallet, whether to copy trade it, or just to analyze how it's been trading in the past and enhance this behavior to propose strategies like DeFi strategies linked to the previous behavior again. So we're seeing this use case come up quite often. And the second thing is again linked to the deep understanding of wallets. So this is also allowing dApps to better understand their customer base and to better create targeted campaigns, because they can understand what their customers are doing. And by understanding their customers, they're able to better propose like marketing strategies and build a product that fits the needs of their customers. I mean, I know we're talking about the future, but I feel like the future is already here. So yeah, it's all ongoing. And it's really exciting times.
Of course. Yeah. So that's definitely a great implication for the future that you could bring to the whole industry. Another on-chain identity, that's another one that we want to talk about here. If you can profile wallets at a behavior level, not just balance snapshots. You can rethink credit scoring, Sybil resistance, and even airdrop design. Is on-chain reputation one of the big unlocks you're looking into?
Yes, I jump on that. Yeah, definitely. And that's the funny thing between Web 2 and Web 3. Because if you think about Web 2, it's built on knowing the customer, right? So every company they have cookies, all marketing platform pushing you marketing information is about what you did in the past, and based on that behavior, I can predict what you will be doing in the future, and that's why I push you a cycling ad because you looked at, for example, a certain type of bike. Now, take this example and try to apply it in Web3. It's completely the opposite. I push you meme coin, but I don't know if you ever traded a meme coin because I don't know you well. So this is a bit annoying when you are a marketing agency, and it's even more annoying when you are building a product. Because when you're building a product, you need to understand your clients and think about every dApp today that exists. Every dApp, they know what their customers are doing on their platform, like how much liquidity they're adding, how active they are on their platform, but they don't know what they're doing elsewhere, what they're doing on a competitor platform, how wealthy they are outside of the platform, how wealthy they were in the past. Because if I start knowing my customers what they're doing outside, I can start proposing better product, better services, treating them differently. And this idea of on-chain profiling, understanding who are the customer for a dApp, for a chain, for running airdrop campaigns is very important and does not exist. And to solve it, there is one thing that needs to be done, which is very technical, which is start understanding what a user did in their transaction, hence categorizing smart contract. Go back to a very technical problem, because anyone can create a smart contract, anyone can push it, but we need models to categorize them. And this is where we're trying. We're not there yet, but we're trying to do as much as we can, categorize those smart contracts and provide full profiling for.
Okay. Makes sense to me. Next one. I want to see what you make of this question. So, Web3 has somewhat of a transparency paradox, right? Everything is public, but nothing is understandable sometimes. Do you see your project as sort of a translation layer that finally bridges that gap between raw data and actionable insight?
Yes, that's a very good. Uh, that's a very good, I would say, way to describe what we're doing. Like,
We can steal it. We can steal it and use it.
it's really a translation layer because not only we are saying what's happening, but we're explaining why it happened. We're giving the context. Just to give you an example, like we're in contact with a trading company, and we're providing them data about liquidity pool. And they say, guys, there is always this behavior that we're trying to follow and we're not able. We need instant information in a liquidity pool, let's say in a V3 liquidity pool, concentrated pool. When the price of the token is outside of this concentrated liquidity, people they're just buying this token because they need to go to another tranche of liquidity, which providing a lot of sell buy pressure on that token. And we have the data to explain to them what's happening or when will it happen. But once again, it's not only about data, it's coupling what's the trader behavior, which we're adding it into an agent compared to the data and creating the context. Okay, if this data is here and this action, this behavior happened, then this is what will happen. So the translation layer is not only taking the raw, transforming it into readable information, but adding the context to it. And this is where people understand why it's happened, why the price increased by 5%. Of course, I'm speaking about big cap token, not like small cap.
Of course. So, okay, Jason, I think you have some final questions.
Yeah, I just want to add to what Elie said there. I love that analogy of the translation layer. I feel like it's so fitting, especially in this case. Don't know why, it just resonates with me. But another interesting thing that you just said was you guys are able to understand the way that the traders are sort of interacting and the behavioral analytics behind that. And I think that's super important. It's almost like this major missing link that almost every single project's marketing team is facing is why is a certain user buying the token and selling the token? And I guess those behavioral aspects behind it, fueling that sort of behavior. I just think it's so powerful, in my opinion, and it's really interesting to know.
Yeah, and funny fact, in fact, it was someone who told me, give $1,000 to three people and give them the same data. One of them will double down, one of them will keep them 1,000, and one of them will lose them. They have access to the same data, they have the same amount of money. It's just how you interpret this data and how do you use it in your favor. And that's what we're trying to make it easier for the end customer.
Yeah, I'm really excited to sort of explore these use
Not
cases.
financial advice.
Of course, always NFA, isn't it? But yeah, it's really exciting stuff. I mean, I feel like it's definitely gonna make my job as a marketer a lot easier, especially when the execs are asking me, how do we how do we understand what these users are doing? And you guys are gonna be the go-to for that. Awesome. I'm gonna move into this sort of last.
Who to give an airdrop campaign to and make sure that they're not gonna drop it in the coming hours. I mean that's a big problem, right? So, but if you have behavior and you understand how they have performed in the past on another airdrop campaign, how much they left the token, did they add to liquidity, did they sold it did they transfer it to another wallet because they think they're very intelligent and no one will recognize this. We have all those patterns. And we can.
I mean, that alone is really interesting because that's a major, I want to say, blocker when it comes to running these sort of airdrop campaigns as well. It's like syllable activity, especially on the wallets and stuff. So, I mean, that's going to be awesome. It's definitely a great use case for a lot of founders, isn't it? So, moving into this sort of last final segment here of our show. It's been great so far having you guys on and to hear all about data. So I want to get into, I guess, my second to last question. So if every AI agent in crypto needs a reliable source of truth to operate on, right? What's the single biggest moat Datai is building to become that source?
Yeah, that's a very interesting one. It's always hard to choose like your mode, but I think at Datai Network, our mode is trust that you can verify and at scale. And the way that we guard it, it's in three main aspects, I would say. So the first one is by having the biggest like living Web3 knowledge graph. And since we're already tagging more contracts and wallet behaviors than anyone else today that we know of, and it keeps learning from new data every hour. So an agent can ask like, what happened here? And they would get a clear, humanly understandable answer. And the second way is that it's proof baked. So it's every label or risk score, it's actually timestamped and signed by the node that produced it. So any bot can trace the evidence chain and know that we didn't tweak any numbers after the fact. So everything is basically like able to be proven. And the last one is that we have incentives in place that make sure that the data is of high quality, because indexers on our network, they basically earn more for being the fastest and the most accurate. And then they lose rewards if their peers disagree. So this basically makes the whole ecosystem trustworthy and makes sure to incentivize like the best and highest quality data possible. So the network, in a way, it truly pays to keep itself honest in a way. So yeah, put together, that's a source of truth that you can audit, you can depend on, and that is completely like verifiable.
I mean, that's amazing. I love that sort of the way that you summarized that. And you guys have almost built this flywheel to ensure that, I guess, all that data is truthful. And it's really awesome to see. Okay, last question from me, guys. Then I won't take up too much more of your time. But finally, when we look back 5 years from now, what's the story you hope people tell about data's role in building the foundation of decentralized AI and finance?
Yeah, that's often like something that we think about a lot, like how do you want to be seen in the future? And to sum it up, I would say that I would want people to say that Datai Network did for blockchain what Google did for the web in the past. So turning an overwhelming amount of data into something that's searchable, that's contextual, that you're able to utilize. Whether you're a solo like hacker, whether you're a tier one bank, you can get access to the same clear view of on-chain activity without needing any like technical skills or any advantageous, let's say, circumstances. So that data equality, in our opinion, is gonna help like explode a whole suite of AI powered products that we can't even imagine today. And the end goal would be like to have the network outlive any company, even us, that helped build it. Like in the end, it has to be decentralized and run on its own and have a completely like verifiable, trustworthy system that can serve everyone.
Yeah, that's an awesome answer. And I really loved the example that you gave in the beginning about what Google did for the internet, right? It's an awesome analogy. Cool. I think we're nearing the end here.
Yeah, that was an inspiring end to our question and answer period there. Really appreciate it. So, guys, thank you so much for joining us. It's been amazing to learn more about, the future of on-chain data, intelligence, and infrastructure, of course, that you're building. And, we started this podcast to go beyond surface level Web3 hype. We really wanted to meet founders, talk about the work that they're doing. And I think this conversation really showed that data isn't just infrastructure, it's narrative, it's leverage, it's identity. So there's so much more to data than we really thought. And if you were listening closely today, I think you really come away with a much improved impression to that end about the power of data in Web3. So if you're listening and you're curious to try Datai's tools or Testnet, we'll leave all the links in the show notes below. And if you're a dev builder or just a data geek, it's absolutely worth diving in. So we'll be back next week with another deep dive on the front lines of crypto, AI, and tech. Until then, follow ChainGPT Labs on Twitter, hit subscribe, and make sure to share this episode with someone building for the long game. Shout out to my co-host Jay for doing so well today. It's been really fun to do this with you. And of course, thanks again to our guests. All right, guys.
Thank you so much.